Oh, great. So this is a recording where I'm going to explain surface area to volume ratios, specifically in plant cells. In a plant cell, what we've talked about in class and what I asked you on the mastery check is we've mentioned that plant cells are really large compared to animal cells. So if I'm going to draw a plant cell on here and try to make it nice and big and also try to give it some dimensionality. So I'm going to give it some dimension here, like this, there. So I have a three-dimensional kind of rectangular shaped plant cell here. Whereas an animal cell, as you know, if you looked at the diagram, compared to plant cells, they're really small. So just looking at these and remembering what you've learned about surface area to volume, which one has the most advantageous surface area to volume? The smaller cell does. The smaller cell has a larger surface area to volume ratio, whereas the plant cell, because volume grows so much faster than surface area, just mathematically, has a very small surface area to volume ratio. And generally that's a bad thing, because what that means is that this cell has lots of cell membrane relative to the needy cytoplasm inside that is digesting and creating things and making waste and making ATP and needing food and needing waste to put out. So per unit of cell membrane, there's a smaller amount of needy cytoplasm that needs to be serviced in this cell. And a large surface area to volume means that's good. You have lots of cell membrane bringing in all the food that little cytoplasm needs. Now, if you look at the plant cell, you would think, well, the plant cell can't possibly be maintaining its homeostasis, because look at all this cytoplasm in here. And we know that because of the volume growing so much faster than the membrane, the outer surface, that must mean that there's not enough cell membrane to bring in enough food to feed it, or to take out enough waste to keep it from toxifying. But here's the issue, and most of you, I think, know this much, is that there is a giant vacuole in a plant cell. In most plant cells, they have these giant vacuoles in there. They're called central vacuoles that take up a huge amount of the cell. And they're three-dimensional too, so I can also try to make that kind of three-dimensional there, right? Trying to show that has some dimension to it, just like the cell, the entire cell does. So you've got this big amount of volume in there, and because its only function, the vacuole's only function really is to store water and salts. So this entire bit of the volume of the plant cell is, I don't know if I'm right, metabolically inactive. Or if you want to use that SAT word, you can say inert, I-N-E-R-T. Either way, it's correct, right? You don't have to use fancy language if you use a word that's right. So nothing in here is in need of food. It's not eating. It's not doing any chemical reactions in there. It's not doing respiration. It's not digesting. It's not creating any waste. But the little sliver of cytoplasm out here, you've got a nucleus just like any cell, and you have mitochondria, and you have chloroplasts, and you have ER, and you have Golgi bodies. You have a busy cytoplasm right here. In between the membrane of the vacuole and the outer membrane of the cell, you do have a cytoplasm that needs food and needs to have waste taken out of it, right? So this is still a cell, a working cell that's taking in food and digesting it and making ATP and doing all those things. It's just that it gives you the illusion that it has a huge amount of cytoplasm that's doing that. And in fact, only the sliver of cytoplasm around the edge of the vacuole is busy doing that, right? So this out here is the metabolically active part of the cytoplasm, right? That has all the eukaryotic organelles that you learned about. So what happens here is you still have a surface area volume to ratio that is overall very small. But that's okay here because you also have, because of the central vacuole, you have a decreased amount of cytoplasm that needs to be serviced, right? That is metabolically active and needs to have the work of the cell membrane going on. Okay, and then I just want to add that because a lot of the classes had some misconceptions about this, there's another structure around the cell membrane on this plant cell. What is it? What's on the cell wall? Very good. I'm going to use a different color for a cell wall. I'm going to make it green. So remember that there is this thick cell wall that is around that black line, which would be the cell membrane. And what I want to really quickly go over is the difference between cell walls and cell membranes, because there is quite a difference. Right. Okay, so the cell wall, what's it made of? Cellulose, right, undigestible fibrous cellulose, which is all about structure, right? Okay, and what is the cell membrane, the black line inside it, made of? Phospholipid bilayer with some protein stuck in it to help for channels for other things that can't fit through the bilayer. Okay, so which part, is it the cell membrane or the cell wall that's bringing in food and letting out waste? This is the membrane. The membrane is the working organelle that's actually semi-permeable, keeping bad stuff out, pumping good stuff in, pumping bad stuff out, right? So the cell membrane is a working thin membrane that really is picky and semi-permeable, whereas the cell wall is really nothing more than a big chain link fence that's stiff and doesn't move, right? And really it has an important function though. And the reason why I wanted to make a note of it is the cell wall works together with the central vacuole. Because remember, there's water in here. And what's going on with the central vacuole is this is what a plant has instead of a skeleton. The water inside the vacuole presses against that green cell wall. And it's kind of like inflating a balloon inside a cardboard box. It makes the cardboard box less collapsible, more stiff, right? So it's kind of like when your mom has a plant on the windowsill and it's drooping a bit. And she pours water in there, what happens? All of the central vacuoles in a million cells fill up with water pressure that presses against a million little cell walls, and the plant goes upright again, right? That's called turgor pressure. So there is a very important function of these big central vacuoles. They're not just sitting there being empty and non-metabolic. They are physically, because of the water pressure of water and physics, keeping the plant upright, keeping leaves up near the sun where they can reach the light and do better photosynthesis. So there is actually a function to that big empty vacuole, okay? I hope that is helpful, and that will help you better answer that last question on the Mastery 2A, whether you're revising it today or doing it for the first time. So I'm going to stop that, and hopefully that was helpful.